What would you do? If 100 of the most powerful princesses in the world stood before you, each armed not with swords, but with beauty, charm, and dangerous ambition, yet your heart longed for someone who could never stand among them? What if you were a king, an alpha king, and the laws of your realm demanded that you choose one of them as your queen? But every beat of your heart whispered another name, not a name spoken in royal courts, not a name embroidered on silk banners, but the name of your maid, the girl who scrubbed your floors, the one who carried trays of food through endless hallways, the one who was invisible to everyone but you. Would you risk your throne for her? Would you defy kingdoms, break centuries of tradition, and challenge the fury of 100 rejected princesses? Or would you bury your heart and let destiny chain you to someone you do not love? And what about her? What would a poor maid do when fate drags her into the most dangerous game of love and power, where beauty is a weapon, betrayal is inevitable, and survival itself may depend on keeping her heart hidden? This is the story of King Kaelion Draemir, the Alpha King of Elarindor, and Serenya Vale, the maid who never knew she was destined to shatter empires. The kingdom of Elarindor stretched across valleys of silver mist and forests, so ancient they whispered with the howls of wolves at night. It was a land of beauty, but also of fear, because everyone knew their ruler was no ordinary king. He was an alpha, a man who carried within him the blood of the great wolf clans, a man both worshipped and feared, King Kaelion Draemir, the last of his line, the unchallenged Alpha King. His strength was unmatched, his gaze sharp as obsidian steel, and his wolf, restless, feral, burned within him like a caged storm. The people adored him. Nobles respected him. Enemies feared him. But his throne carried one shadow, one weakness that whispered across every court, every banquet, every council chamber. The Alpha King had no queen. For years, kingdoms had sent emissaries, envoys, and secret letters, all offering daughters, cousins, princesses, even widows, each hoping to secure the throne of Elarindor through marriage. But the Alpha King had refused them all. Some whispered he was too proud. Others claimed his wolf rejected every suitor, and the boldest dared to whisper that perhaps he was cursed. Then, one winter morning, as frost glazed the palace towers like diamonds, the great silver bell of Elarindor rang across the land. An announcement, one that would change everything. The people crowded the capital square, bundled in furs and cloaks, their breaths rising in clouds as they waited. On the balcony of the grand palace, high above them, Kaelion stepped forward, his black cloak lined with wolf fur, his crown glinting with firestones. When he raised his hand, silence fell. His voice carried, deep and commanding, "Hear me, people of Elarindor. The time has come. The Alpha King must take his queen." The crowd erupted into cheers and gasps. 100 princesses chosen from every allied and rival kingdom will come to Elarindor. They will compete in trials of honor, strength, wisdom, and grace. And at the end, I will choose the one who shall stand beside me as queen. A roar of excitement swept through the people. Merchants already imagined the wealth that visiting princesses would bring. Nobles whispered about alliances, and common folk dreamed of witnessing beauty beyond compare. But far behind the balcony, deep inside the palace kitchens, a maid stood frozen, her hands still clutching a tray of steaming bread. Her name was Serenya Vale. Serenya was not a princess. She was not even noble. She was a maid, a girl of 17 summers with hands worn from scrubbing stone floors and carrying heavy buckets. Her dress was plain linen, patched in 3 places, her shoes thin and frayed. If this story already has your heart racing, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss the next interesting, addictive tale of betrayal, passion, and fate. Trust me, you'll want to be here for every twist that's coming. But if anyone bothered to look closely, they would have noticed her eyes. Emerald green, bright, sharp, and unyielding, like the forests of Elarindor itself. Those eyes had caught the Alpha King's attention long ago. Though Serenya never dared to meet his gaze, Kaelion had noticed her in the quietest of ways, her soft hums while working, her patience with younger servants, her ability to move unseen, yet carry a strength that no princess ever possessed. And in the moments when his wolf raged within him, restless, snarling, rejecting the touch of royal women, it was Serenya's scent, faint as wild jasmine, that calmed the storm. She did not know it, but she was already the most dangerous rival to 100 princesses. The palace buzzed with frenzy. Princes, dukes, and nobles flooded in, preparing chambers for the royal guests. Courtiers polished their words, ready to charm foreign royalty. Tailors worked until their fingers bled, sewing gowns that shimmered like starlight. Every corridor echoed with one name: the ball. Servants whispered of what it would mean: 100 princesses, all dazzling, all ambitious. Some joked that Kaelion would faint from the perfume alone. Others whispered darker things. What if one princess decided not to compete fairly? What if daggers, poisons, or curses crept into the trials? And yet, in the kitchens, Serenya quietly scrubbed pots, pretending not to hear the laughter and gossip. She told herself it had nothing to do with her. She was just a maid. But late at night, when the palace slept and moonlight filtered across her small bed in the servants' quarters, Serenya's thoughts betrayed her. She remembered the way the king's eyes sometimes lingered on her, not with command, not with contempt, but with something she could never name. And she wondered, just once, quietly, shamefully, what it might feel like to be chosen. Far above, in chambers lined with wolf pelts and ancient swords, Kaelion Draemir sat alone. The council had forced his hand. For years he resisted, but the kingdom demanded a queen, heirs, stability. He could no longer delay. But his wolf was restless. His wolf rejected them all. Every time a noble daughter smiled, his wolf snarled. Every time a princess touched his hand, his wolf recoiled. And yet, when Serenya passed him in the hall, carrying trays or kneeling with her mop, the wolf grew still, watching, waiting. It terrified him. How could an alphaking bond with a maid? It was unthinkable, dangerous, forbidden. But Kaelion Draemir had learned one truth in his years of rule: a wolf's heart could not be deceived. As snow fell over Elarindor and the world prepared for the greatest gathering of princesses in history, two hearts beat in silence. One was the heart of an alphaking, chained by duty. The other, the heart of a maid, hidden in shadows. Neither spoke their truth. Neither dared to dream. But fate had already begun weaving their story. And once the first princess set foot in Elarindor, neither king nor maid would ever be invisible again. What if the man everyone worships carried a secret so dark it could topple his throne? What if the alphaking himself, the very symbol of power and stability in Elarindor, was at war with his own beast? And what if the only one who could tame him was the one woman he could never claim? The people of Elarindor believed their king was unshakable. They saw him as a god among men, his power absolute, his dominance unquestionable. Yet behind the golden doors of the palace, away from the eyes of nobles, soldiers, and common folk, Kaelion Draemir lived with a truth that burned like a blade at his throat. His wolf was rejecting every suitor, every noble daughter, every princess sent to him, no matter their beauty, no matter their grace. The beast within him wanted nothing to do with them, and it was growing restless. That night, after the proclamation of the ball, Kaelion stood before a mirror taller than any man, its frame carved with silver wolves. His reflection was regal, his crown heavy with jewels, his cloak a cascade of midnight fur. To the world, he looked untouchable. But in his eyes, dark, stormy, glimmering with gold, there was something feral, something dangerous. He gripped the edge of the marble basin until his knuckles turned white. His chest rose and fell with the effort of controlling the beast inside. "Not now," he muttered through clenched teeth. "Not here." But the wolf answered him, growling deep in his bones, a sound no human ear could hear. It snarled at the thought of the princesses traveling toward his kingdom. It clawed at his chest, demanding freedom. And it whispered, not with words, but with primal instinct, of a scent it craved. Jasmine, wild and untamed. The scent of a maid. In the weeks leading to the ball, Kaelion's secret only worsened. At council meetings, he would sit at the head of the table, speaking of alliances and strategies, yet beneath the table his hand pressed hard against the armrest, his claws half-formed, digging into the wood. At night, he would wake drenched in sweat, his body trembling with the force of transformation, his wolf prowling inside him, desperate for release. There were moments, terrifying moments, when he nearly lost control. Once, a noblewoman touched his arm during a banquet, smiling sweetly. For the briefest instant, his vision blurred, his wolf surged forward, and he almost shifted before the entire court. He excused himself, retreating to the shadows of his chambers, trembling like a man at war with himself. Another time, while training with his warriors, he heard the distant laughter of Serenya from the courtyard below. His wolf froze, then quieted, listening. And for the first time that day, the storm in his chest fell silent. Kaelion had never known such a thing. His wolf, wild, defiant, uncontrollable, stilled at the presence of a maid. It became a cruel cycle. The more his wolf rejected the noble women of the court, the more Kaelion sought out fleeting glimpses of Serenya. He told himself it was coincidence, that he simply happened to pass through the kitchens when she was there, that he simply took the northern corridor because she was polishing its floors. But the truth was undeniable. His wolf only calmed when she was near. He remembered the way her hair caught the torchlight, dark, simple yet luminous in its own way. He remembered the way her lips pressed together in concentration as she carried heavy trays. And above all, he remembered the scent that clung to her, not perfume, not oils, but the faint sweetness of wild jasmine, as though the forests themselves had chosen her as their daughter. And that scent drove his wolf mad with need. Yet what future could there be in that? Kaelion was a king, an alphaking. He could not take a maid for his queen. The council would never allow it. The nobles would riot. The allied kingdoms would turn their backs. And worse, 100 princesses were coming to claim him. One evening, when the moon was swollen and pale, Kaelion felt his control slipping. The wolf raged within him, clawing for freedom, snarling for its mate. He strode into the royal hunting grounds, where ancient stone walls kept the world out and wild forests kept his beast hidden. There he fell to his knees. The transformation ripped through him, bones cracking, muscles twisting, fur spreading across his skin. His roar split the silence of the woods as his body became something else, something monstrous, magnificent, terrifying. The great black wolf burst forth, eyes glowing gold, fangs bared, power radiating like heat from his massive form. But even in this primal shape, there was no peace. The wolf prowled the forest, snapping branches, tearing at the earth, howling at the sky. It was restless, it was unsatisfied, until the wind shifted, and there it was, that scent, wild jasmine. From across the castle grounds, faint yet unmistakable. Serenya. The wolf stilled, its ears perked, its growl softened into a rumble of longing, and Kaelion, buried deep inside the beast, realized the truth he could no longer deny. His wolf had chosen. When dawn came, Kaelion returned to the palace, his body aching, his mind heavy. He washed the blood and soil from his skin, but he could not wash away the truth. He could not have Serenya, not as queen, not as mate, not as anything. He was trapped between two worlds, his duty to his people and the primal bond of his wolf. He stood at the balcony, staring over the awakening kingdom, and for the first time in years, he felt powerless. The council would demand he choose a princess. The people expected a queen of royal blood. The alliances of kingdoms hung by a thread. But his wolf would not yield. And what of Serenya? She had no idea of the firestorm she had ignited. She woke at dawn, brushed the dust from her simple dress, and carried on with her chores. She did not know that every step she took, every breath she drew, was driving the alphaking mad. She did not know that when she hummed to herself in the kitchens, her song echoed in Kaelion's mind like a balm against the rage of his beast. She did not know that her mere presence was the difference between a kingdom ruled in peace and a king who might lose himself to the monster inside. And if she had known, would she have run? Or would she have dared to look at the king, really look at him, and realize she was the one thing his heart could never let go of? The nights grew longer, the wolf grew hungrier, and the ball drew nearer. Kaelion lay awake in his chambers, staring at the ceiling, his heart torn between desire and duty. 100 princesses would soon arrive. 100 princesses who would offer him beauty, power, alliances, and thrones. But none of them could calm his wolf. None of them could touch the storm inside him. Only Serenya, only the maid. And that truth was more dangerous than any enemy he had ever faced. The bells of Elarindor tolled, a sound that rolled across the skies like a summons to fate itself. The day had come, the day when kingdoms converged, when banners of foreign lands fluttered at the gates, when beauty, ambition, and greed marched proudly into the alphaking's domain. They came like waves crashing upon the shore. The first carriages rattled over the cobblestone courtyard at dawn, lacquered in gold, adorned with jewels, pulled by horses bred in foreign lands. Behind each gilded door stepped a princess, radiant as the dawn, draped in silks that shimmered like liquid fire, each one certain that destiny would crown her queen. But behind the gleam of their jewels and the grace of their movements lurked something darker: competition, envy, the sharp edge of desperation. 100 princesses, 100 thrones worth of power, 100 rivalries now bound beneath one roof, and in the shadows of it all, a maid. Serenya Vale moved through the grand halls unnoticed, as she always did, carrying a basket of fresh linens, her emerald eyes cast to the floor. She had been tasked to prepare chambers for the guests, chambers fit for royalty, with velvet curtains and feathered bedding. She worked in silence, brushing stray strands of her dark hair back, unaware that her very presence was being written into the most dangerous chapter of Elarindor's history. The palace had never looked so alive. Trumpets blared. The royal guard lined the entrance in gleaming silver armor. Nobles craned their necks to glimpse the women stepping out of their carriages, whispering feverishly about alliances and dowries, about which kingdom would triumph, which beauty would claim the alphaking's heart. And still, Kaelion watched from the high balcony above, his jaw set like stone, his storm-dark eyes scanning the endless procession. To any onlooker, he was regal perfection, the unshakable king, the alpha of alphas. But deep in his chest, his wolf prowled, restless and unimpressed. Not one scent, not one face stirred him. Until, faintly, across the perfumes and powders and crushed roses trampled beneath royal slippers, it found her again. Jasmine, wild, untamed, Serenya. The arrival was a spectacle meant to dazzle the kingdom, but beneath the music and color, rivalries already sparked like flint. The air grew thick with tension as the princesses began to notice each other, measuring jewels against jewels, gowns against gowns, smiles edged with venom. Each one had been told she was the most beautiful in the land, the most powerful, the most destined. Now, standing shoulder to shoulder, their pride began to crack. And then she arrived, Princess Vera Silvaris of Merathia. The courtyard fell into silence when her carriage rolled forward. Black as midnight, edged with silver wolves, the chariot gleamed under the sun. When the doors opened, the first glimpse of her silenced the crowd. Tall, statuesque, her silver hair cascading like a waterfall, her amethyst eyes gleaming with cunning. Unlike the others, she did not smile, did not curtsy sweetly to the king's banners. She stepped onto the stones with the confidence of a conqueror, her gaze sweeping the palace walls as though she already owned them. Whispers spread like wildfire. That is Vera Silvaris, daughter of the Blood Queen. They say she conquered 3 suitors before her 20th year. She was danger wrapped in silk, beauty sharpened into a blade. And when she tilted her head upward to glance at the balcony where Kaelion stood, her smile curved, not sweet but sly, a vow that she would not leave Elarindor without a crown on her head. Kaelion's wolf growled low inside him, not with desire, but with warning. He could sense the hunger radiating off her like heat, the way she already measured him as prey to be hunted. Yet the court cheered, blinded by her splendor. And in that moment, as the guards bowed, Serenya slipped quietly through the courtyard gates, her basket clutched tightly in her hands. She kept her gaze low, careful not to draw attention as nobles surged forward to welcome Vera. But Kaelion's eyes followed her, not the princess. Always her. Inside the palace, the competition began long before the first trial. The princesses were shown their chambers, each more lavish than the last. Yet instead of marveling, they watched one another with thinly veiled disdain. In the grand hall, where mirrors lined the walls and chandeliers sparkled with thousands of crystals, they gathered like predators circling the same prey. Some whispered alliances, whispers Serenya overheard as she polished the marble floors. If we weaken the others, we stand stronger. He favors blondes, I've heard. That will be his weakness. Do you think he would choose one of us? Or will this be for politics alone? Their laughter was cruel, their words like daggers cloaked in honey. And then Vera entered. The room hushed as if the very air bent to her command. She did not need to speak loudly. Her presence was enough to silence the chatter. With a glance, she dismissed half the room as unworthy. With a smile, she gathered the boldest and most ambitious into her orbit. And in a voice smooth as velvet, she said, "We may all seek the same throne. But remember this. The Alpha King will not be won by beauty alone. He will be won by power. And I intend to have both." The princesses who listened nodded, caught in her gravity. Those who did not would become her prey. Serenya, crouched in the corner as she scrubbed the tiles, kept her head bowed. But when she dared to lift her gaze for a fleeting instant, she saw Vera's amethyst eyes land on her. Just for a moment. Sharp. Calculating. It was enough to make Serenya's heart stumble in her chest. For the first time, she realized the danger of being seen. Kaelion did not join the princesses that day. He could not. His wolf snarled too violently at their scents, rejecting them with every fiber of its being. He remained in his chambers, pacing, restless, his mind clouded by one thought only, her. But Serenya knew nothing of that. She worked until her hands ached, serving food, laying linens, sweeping the dust tracked in by royal shoes. And though she tried to keep to the shadows, her path seemed cursed to cross with Kaelion's gaze. Once she passed by the great hall as the doors opened, and for a heartbeat, his eyes caught hers, storm and fire locked on emerald. She dropped her basket, fumbling with the linens, her cheeks burning. And though he turned away a moment later, the image burned into her chest like a brand. She did not know that in that single moment, Kaelion's wolf had quieted, its rage subdued as though soothed by her very presence. But Vera noticed. From across the hall, Vera's sharp gaze followed the king's. She saw where his eyes had lingered, not on her, not on the princesses adorned in rubies and gold, but on the maid. The lowly, dust-covered maid with wild green eyes, her lips curved into a dangerous smile. "Well," she whispered to herself, "isn't that interesting?" The ball had not even begun, yet the game was already underway. The 100 princesses sharpened their claws. The king's wolf grew restless. And Serenya Vale, the poor maid with the scent of wild jasmine, stood unknowingly at the heart of a storm that would change the fate of kingdoms. The night of the ball arrived like a storm waiting on the horizon, charged, heavy, full of unspoken promises and unrelenting danger. The palace of Elarindor, already magnificent in its gilded stone and towering spires, transformed into something otherworldly. Lanterns lined the courtyards, glowing like captive stars. The grand hall shimmered with candlelight, each flame mirrored 100 times in walls of glass and polished gold. Music floated on the air, a symphony of strings and drums that seemed to vibrate with the pulse of something more primal. Like a heartbeat that belonged not to the musicians, not to the guests, but to the Alpha King himself. 100 princesses stood in a circle of light, dressed in gowns that glittered with jewels worth more than cities. Rubies, diamonds, sapphires, silks woven with threads of gold. Each woman was a vision crafted to seduce, to conquer. They were the weapons of their kingdoms, sharpened and polished, prepared to fight not with blades but with beauty and cunning. And they were all here for one man. Kaelion Draemir, the Alpha King, descended the staircase like a figure carved from myth. Midnight cloak flowing, crown heavy on his brow, his dark eyes glimmered with a wolfish light that silenced every whisper. The air shifted with his presence, domineering, suffocating, electrifying. To stand in his gaze was to feel both awe and terror, as though he might claim you with a glance or crush you with a word. Every princess straightened, their smiles blooming like poisonous flowers. The musicians paused, waiting for the king's signal. Kaelion's voice rolled through the hall, deep and commanding, yet edged with something wild. "Tonight," he said, "the dance of the wolves begins." A murmur rippled through the crowd. The ancient ritual, the trial every suitor must face, the test that bound Alpha and Queen. Tradition held that each princess would dance with the king under the watch of his wolf. Their movements were not mere steps to music, but a ritual to awaken the beast inside him. If the wolf accepted her, if their rhythm aligned, if the bond sparked, the dance would be flawless, a sign of destiny. But if the wolf rejected her, the steps would falter, the beast would resist, and the truth would be undeniable. The first princess stepped forward, draped in crimson silk, her beauty enough to make men weep. She curtsied, eyes glowing with hope. The music rose. Kaelion took her hand, cold and trembling beneath his. They began to move, graceful steps, perfect rhythm. The crowd watched in silence, and then the sound. A low growl rumbled from the depths of Kaelion's chest. His wolf stirred, rejecting. His jaw tightened, his grip slackened. The princess faltered, her smile breaking, her cheeks flushing with humiliation. The dance ended abruptly, the air thick with disappointment. The crowd shifted uneasily. The second princess approached, then the third, then the fourth. Each more radiant than the last, each more desperate, each more determined to be the one who broke the curse. And yet with every dance, the result was the same. Kaelion's wolf snarled, restless, angry. His movements became sharp, his patience thinner. Whispers hissed through the hall. Has his wolf gone mad? None of them. None? What if he cannot be tamed? By the 15th rejection, unease curdled into dread. By the 30th, nobles exchanged nervous glances. By the 50th, silence blanketed the hall. The Alpha King, the unshakable symbol of power, was failing the trial before the eyes of every kingdom. But Kaelion's storm-dark gaze remained cold, unyielding. He knew the truth his court did not. None of them would succeed. His wolf had chosen long before this night, and she was not among the women in jewels and silk. The music swelled again as Princess Vera Silveris stepped into the circle. Gasps rose from the crowd as she moved with the elegance of a predator. Amethyst eyes glittered, her smile curved with unshakable confidence. She approached the king as though she had already won. "Your Majesty," she purred, bowing low. "Shall we show them how destiny looks?" Kaelion's hand closed over hers, firm and unyielding. The music began, slower this time, a pulsing rhythm that echoed like a heartbeat. Vera moved with grace, every step calculated, every turn perfect. She pressed close, her voice low enough for only him to hear. "You can fight it, my king," she whispered, her breath brushing his ear. "But you will not fight me. You need a queen who matches your strength, not some fragile." Her words broke off when Kaelion's wolf surged violently within him. A growl thundered from his chest, so deep the chandeliers trembled. His grip on her wrist tightened, hard enough to make her wince. The crowd gasped, some stepping back in fear. Vera's composure faltered for a flicker of a moment, her eyes wide with something dangerously close to shock. The dance ended not with grace, but with Kaelion releasing her hand as though her touch burned him. The silence that followed was suffocating. Vera's lips curved into a smile again, but this time it was colder, sharper, the smile of a woman whose pride had been wounded. She curtsied, her eyes flashing like steel. "Perhaps," she said softly, "your wolf is waiting for the right moment." But in her mind, fury blazed. She had never been rejected before, and she would not be again. The trial dragged on. Princess after princess, dance after dance. Rejection, failure. The Alpha King's wolf refused them all. And then it happened. Serenya. She had not meant to be there. She had been ordered to deliver fresh wine to the side tables, her simple dress dust-stained, her hair tied loosely back. She slipped into the hall quietly, unnoticed at first, balancing the tray in her hands. She tried to keep her gaze low, tried not to disrupt the ritual that held the attention of the world. But fate does not care for intention. As she crossed the edge of the dance floor, her foot caught the hem of her skirt. The tray wobbled, wine sloshing dangerously. She stumbled forward, straight into the circle of light. The music stopped. Gasps rippled through the hall. 100 princesses turned their eyes on her like blades drawn from their sheaths. The maid. The lowly maid had invaded the sacred trial. Serenya froze, breathless, mortified. Her knees threatened to give way beneath the crushing weight of every gaze. She opened her mouth to apologize, to flee. But then she made the mistake of lifting her eyes, and she saw him. Kaelion. His storm-dark eyes locked on hers with a force that stole the air from her lungs. For a moment, the world fell silent. The candles dimmed. The crowd faded. There was only him and her and the wild roar that suddenly quieted in his chest. His wolf stilled. The beast that had raged through 100 rejections, that had growled and clawed and snarled, fell silent in the presence of the maid. A hush fell over the hall, so complete that even the flames seemed to stop flickering. Kaelion's chest rose and fell once, slowly as though he were breathing for the first time in years. His gaze devoured her, raw and unmasked, something primal burning in the depths of his eyes. Serenya's heart pounded like thunder. She should have run. She should have dropped to her knees, begged forgiveness, fled the hall before the wrath of the princesses descended. But she couldn't move. She couldn't look away. She was trapped in the storm of his gaze, drowning in it, trembling under the weight of a truth she did not understand. The silence shattered with the growl of a voice, deep, dangerous, hungry. "Dance with me." It was the Alpha King, speaking not to the princesses, not to the nobles, but to her, the maid. Serenya's breath caught. Her hands trembled against the tray. She shook her head, stammering, My lord, I cannot." But Kaelion was already moving. He stepped forward, his presence towering, his hand reaching for hers. The wolf within him, the beast that had rejected royalty and nobility alike, surged forward now, not in rejection, but in claim. And when his fingers closed around hers, the hall erupted, gasps, shouts, cries of disbelief. 100 princesses stiffened with outrage, their jeweled smiles shattering into venomous glares. Nobles whispered furiously. Vera's amethyst eyes narrowed, her lips curving into something that was no longer a smile, but a promise of blood. But Kaelion did not care. For the first time in years, his wolf was silent, at peace, and the music began again. Only this time, the dance of the wolves was no ritual of failure. It was something else entirely, something forbidden, something fated. The hall had never known silence so heavy, so suffocating. 100 princesses stood in their glittering gowns, rage simmering in their jeweled eyes, while the Alpha King swayed with a maid who should never have been there. But she was, Serenya Vale, her hand trembling in his, her breath shallow, her heart pounding like war drums inside her chest. Every step she took felt stolen, every glance up at his storm-dark eyes a sin. The music wove around them, binding them tighter, daring anyone in the hall to break the spell. And no one could. For Kaelion's wolf, the beast that had rejected every royal suitor in fury, was quiet. For the first time in years, his chest did not ache with the restless clawing of the monster within. Instead, it was still, soothed, enthralled by her. The maid. But Serenya felt none of that triumph. She felt the weight of every gaze piercing her flesh, the venom of 100 princesses who wanted her destroyed. She tried to look away from the alphaking, tried to lower her gaze and remember her place. But Kaelion would not allow it. His grip on her hand was firm, his gaze relentless, burning into her as if to say, "Look at me. Only me." She stumbled in the dance, untrained, her movements clumsy beside the elegance of the princesses who had practiced their entire lives for this moment. Yet Kaelion guided her with effortless strength, leading her through steps she did not know, as though her body had always belonged in his arms. Gasps rippled when he pressed a hand to her waist, pulling her closer, breaking the distance no one else had been allowed to breach. Whispers began, sharp, cruel, dangerous. "Is that a servant? By the gods, he dances with a maid. This is blasphemy, a disgrace." And then, softer still, the whispers that cut sharper than blades. She must have bewitched him. A witch. Yes, that's the only explanation. Serenya's stomach twisted with fear. Her mother's execution haunted her, burned for witchcraft, though all she had ever done was heal. Now those same whispers turned toward her, but Kaelion heard them too. His jaw tightened, his steps deliberate, and his eyes, when they flicked toward the crowd, were darker than the storm itself. Let them whisper. Let them choke on their outrage. He was alphaking. He bowed to no law but his wolf. The dance ended, but Kaelion did not release her hand. The silence in the hall stretched taut, ready to snap. Then, slowly, deliberately, he raised her trembling hand to his lips and pressed a kiss against her skin. The hall erupted. Shouts, protests, gasps of horror. One princess fainted, another cursed aloud. Nobles muttered in disbelief, clutching at pearls and silks as though scandal itself had struck them down. And Vera Silveris smiled, not with amusement, not with mirth, but with the cold satisfaction of a predator who had just scented blood. Her amethyst eyes gleamed as they locked on Serenya, marking her, claiming her as prey. So, she thought, this is the girl, this is the threat. The maid had stolen the king's attention, but Vera would not allow her to keep it. The following days turned into a battlefield. Serenya did everything she could to avoid Kaelion. She slipped into the kitchens earlier, hid in the servants' quarters, busied herself with endless tasks to stay far from the grand halls. Yet no matter how hard she tried, she felt his gaze. Always. In the throne room, his eyes searched the crowd until they found her. In the gardens, when she carried baskets of herbs, she felt his presence behind the glass windows above. Even in the kitchens, whispers came from guards who claimed the king had passed through only moments after she had. The alphaking sought her, and every time his gaze found hers, her heart betrayed her, fluttering wildly, burning with a heat she could not name. She told herself it was fear. It had to be fear. What else could it be? She was a maid. He was a king. Nothing could exist between them. Nothing but ruin. Yet at night, alone in her small bedchamber, her hand would drift to the place on her wrist where his lips had touched, and her body would shiver at the memory. But the princesses noticed. Of course they noticed. The 100 women, raised in courts of power and deception, saw everything. They saw the way Kaelion's eyes strayed from their painted faces toward the shadows where Serenya worked. They saw the flicker of warmth in his otherwise cold expression. And whispers began to grow. The king favors the maid. He looks at her as though she belongs to him. Does he mean to shame us all? The whispers spread through corridors, across banquet halls, into the ears of nobles and counselors. By the third day, the entire palace pulsed with rumors, and Princess Vera fanned the flames. She gathered the other women in her chamber, her silver hair gleaming under candlelight, her smile like a blade. "Do you not see?" she asked, her voice dripping with venomous sweetness. "We are not competing with one another. We are competing with her, that servant girl, That maid who dares to steal glances at your crown? Do you wish to be humiliated? To be made fools of while he casts aside royalty for filth? Her words sank deep. Pride was more dangerous than poison, and every princess there tasted its bitterness. "What do you suggest?" one asked. Vera's smile sharpened. "I suggest we remind the king and the girl of their places." The tension reached a breaking point during the Feast of Triumph, the second grand banquet of the trials. The hall glowed with golden light, the air thick with the scent of roasted venison, spiced wine, and roses. The princesses dazzled in gowns more extravagant than before, their jewels so heavy they could have bought villages. Serenya, as always, was there to serve. She moved quietly, balancing trays of goblets, her emerald eyes lowered, her dark hair escaping its braid. She tried not to notice the stares. She tried not to notice him. But Kaelion noticed her. Always. When their paths crossed, his gaze lingered. When her fingers brushed his goblet, his hand followed too long. When she bowed her head to hide her blush, his lips curved, just faintly, just enough to make her heart stumble. The whispers grew louder, and then Vera struck. As Serenya bent to pour wine into the alphaking's chalice, Vera's voice rose, silken and cruel. "Tell me, Your Majesty," she said, tilting her head, her amethyst eyes gleaming. "Is it true what they whisper? That your eyes wander to lesser creatures? That perhaps your wolf prefers servants over royalty?" The hall stilled. Serenya froze mid-pour, her cheeks burning, her breath caught in her throat. Her trembling hands nearly spilled the wine. Kaelion's gaze snapped to Vera, sharp as a blade. "Watch your tongue." But the princess only smiled, unbothered, her beauty like a dagger dipped in honey. "Oh, I mean no offense. We all see it, do we not? The way your wolf snarls at us but quiets when she enters the room. It makes one wonder, what spell has she woven to command the beast inside you?" Gasps rippled through the hall. Accusations of witchcraft were not made lightly. Serenya's knees nearly buckled, her heart thrashed like a bird trapped in a cage. She wanted to scream, to deny it, to flee, but her voice would not come. Kaelion rose. The movement was slow, deliberate, terrifying. The entire hall fell silent as the alphaking stood, his cloak sweeping behind him, his wolf's growl vibrating in the air. His eyes burned with unrestrained fury as he fixed Vera with a stare that could have shattered stone. "One more word," he said softly, deadly, "and it will be your last." The silence cracked. The princesses paled. The nobles trembled. Even Vera, proud and unyielding, faltered for the first time. Yet her smile returned quickly, though tighter, sharper, her fury hidden behind charm. "As you command, my king," she purred, bowing her head, but inside, her rage boiled. That night, Serenya wept quietly in her chamber, her fear and confusion suffocating her. She knew Vera would not stop. She knew every princess now saw her as a rival, and she knew the alphaking would not let her slip back into shadows, no matter how much she begged the gods to make her invisible. And as the moon rose high, Kaelion stood on his balcony, his storm-dark eyes fixed on the maid's small window below. His wolf prowled inside him, restless not with rage but with hunger, need, and claim. She was his, but the kingdom would burn before it accepted her. And Princess Vera Silvaris, beneath her silk sheets, whispered a vow into the darkness. The maid will not live to see the crown. What is loyalty worth when the heart already belongs elsewhere? What happens when venom hides behind jeweled smiles, when betrayal drips sweeter than wine? And most dangerously of all, what happens when the alphaking himself, the most powerful creature in Elarindor, is brought to his knees not by sword nor army, but by a single sip of poisoned devotion? Tonight, the feast of loyalty would test more than the ambitions of princesses. It would unravel secrets, ignite rivalries, and demand sacrifices that could change destinies forever. The great hall was a sea of gold and scarlet. Flames from towering candelabras danced across silken banners. glimmering along polished marble floors where long tables groaned beneath the weight of roasted boar. Sugared figs, steaming breads, and goblets overflowing with the king's most precious vintage. 100 princesses sat in rows of splendor, their gowns blazing like captured fire, diamonds dripping from their throats. Each had come to prove not just beauty, but devotion, the sacred trial of loyalty. By midnight, Kaelion would choose which among them showed true fealty to crown and kingdom. But loyalty, Serenya knew, was a blade sharpened on both sides. She moved silently along the line of nobles, balancing a silver tray heavy with goblets of ruby wine. Her emerald eyes stayed low, as they always did, yet she could feel it, the weight of their stares, the burn of whispers following her like shadows. The maid. That's her. The alphaking's eyes follow her like a curse. She gritted her teeth, forcing her hands not to tremble. Tonight, more than any night, she could not falter, because Serenya also felt his eyes. At the head of the hall, on a throne of obsidian carved with wolves in eternal hunt, Kaelion Draemir sat with a presence that silenced all breath. Cloaked in black and steel, his storm-dark gaze devoured the room until it found her, and when it did, the air itself seemed to pause. Serenya's pulse raced. She bowed deeper, hiding her face, though her skin burned where his gaze lingered. And not far away, Princess Vera Silveris watched. Her amethyst eyes gleamed with malice as her jeweled fingers traced the rim of her untouched goblet. A smile curved her lips, not one of mirth, but of cruelty sharpened to perfection. Tonight would not belong to the maid. Tonight Vera would remind the alphaking and the entire hall of where true power lay. The feast began with toasts. Princesses rose, one by one, offering honeyed vows. To serve the crown above my life. To defend the kingdom with blood and bone. To honor the alphaking as moon honors night. Each voice dripped with practiced reverence, but none reached him. Kaelion listened with indifference, his wolf restless beneath his skin, snarling at the lies hidden behind velvet words. But when Serenya passed behind his throne, the beast stilled. She did not speak. She did not offer vows. And yet, her silence carried more truth than their chorus of oaths. Kaelion's jaw tightened, his hand clenched on the arm of his throne. His wolf wanted her, only her. The ritual of the chalice began. At the center of the hall, a golden tray gleamed with 20 goblets of the alphaking's finest wine. Each princess would drink, swearing loyalty before offering the chalice back to Kaelion. A symbolic act, binding courtly devotion with trust. It should have been simple, but Vera Silveris did not deal in simplicity. As Serenya knelt to refill goblets, Vera's hand brushed her sleeve, soft, almost gentle. "Careful, maid," she whispered, her voice like silk laced with venom. "You carry more than wine tonight. You carry destiny. One slip, and you might spill more than red." Before Serenya could respond, Vera's jeweled fingers dipped into her own sleeve. Something shimmered, powder, fine as ash, hidden within a ring. With a flick, it fell into a waiting chalice. A chalice set apart, gleaming brighter than the rest. Serenya didn't see it. But Vera's smirk told her everything. Tonight, blood would be spilled without blade. The poisoned chalice was meant for the maid. The trial began. One by one, princesses lifted their goblets, declaring oaths as they drank. Their jewels glittered, their voices honeyed, their eyes flicking always, always toward Serenya. But the poisoned goblet remained. Waiting. Serenya's hands trembled as she lifted it, as though fate itself pressed weight upon her palms. She stepped toward the alphaking, unaware of the venom that shimmered within the crimson wine. Kaelion's wolf surged. Instinct burned through him. The scent. Wrong. The aura. Threat. Before Serenya could place the goblet before him, his hand shot out, seizing it. His storm-dark eyes locked on hers, fierce, unreadable. Then, without a word, he lifted it to his lips. "No!" Serenya's breath caught, horror flashing across her face. Too late. Kaelion drank. It began like fire. The wine burned down his throat, scorching, twisting, turning sweet into poison. His vision blurred, his chest tightened, His wolf roared inside him, thrashing in agony. He gripped the throne, knuckles white, but even his strength faltered. Gasps filled the hall. The king! Poison! Guards! Chaos erupted. Nobles screamed. Princesses clutched pearls and gowns. Vera feigned shock, her hand at her lips, though her eyes gleamed with cold delight. And Serenya moved before thought. She dropped to her knees beside him, her small hands pressing against his chest as if sheer will could hold him tethered. Her heart pounded, fear clawing her throat, but memory surged. Her mother's voice, her mother's herbs, her mother's whispered teachings in the shadows of a cottage long gone. Not witchcraft. Survival. Her fingers fumbled at her apron pocket, pulling free a tiny pouch of dried herbs she always carried. Bitter, sharp, powerful. Her mother's last gift. She crushed them between trembling fingers, pressing the powder to Kaelion's lips, forcing it between his teeth. Breathe, she begged, her voice breaking. Please, breathe. Don't you dare leave me. Don't you dare. The room froze. The alphaking, feared and revered, leaned into the trembling hands of a maid as she whispered desperate prayers. Seconds stretched into eternity. His body shuddered. His wolf snarled, then fell silent. And then he breathed. A gasp tore from Kaelion's chest, deep and ragged, but alive. His storm-dark eyes flicked open, searing into hers with something raw, primal, unyielding. The hall erupted again, this time with disbelief. The maid saved him? Impossible. What did she do? What power is this? Whispers of witchcraft hissed louder, more dangerous than ever. But Kaelion's hand, trembling, yet strong, rose to cup her face, silencing every voice. Serenya, he rasped, his voice rough with both pain and something deeper, hungrier. Mine. The word fell like thunder, not chosen, not favored, claimed, but in the shadows, Vera Silvaris watched, her amethyst eyes ablaze with fury. The poison was meant for the maid. The maid should have died. Instead, the alphaking had declared her his. And that, Vera swore, would be Serenya Vale's undoing. For loyalty was a blade, and Serenya had just placed herself at the very edge of it. The great hall still trembled with the aftershock of Kaelion's single word. Mine. It had not been a declaration. It had been a vow, a branding, a thunderous claim from the most feared alphaking in history. Nobles and princesses alike sat frozen in disbelief, their jeweled faces pale with outrage or dread. The torches flickered as though the very flames bowed to his command. And Serenya Vale, the maid who should never have been there, the servant whose hands still smelled faintly of crushed herbs, knelt before him with her heart thundering in terror. Mine. The weight of it suffocated her. She wanted to deny it, to pull away, to melt back into shadows where no one could see her. But his hand remained against her face, rough, trembling from poison and yet unyielding. His storm-dark eyes locked on hers as though the world beyond her ceased to exist. It should have been a moment of triumph. But for Serenya, it was the edge of a blade pressed against her throat. Because now every princess, every noble, every watching rival would see her not as a maid. Not even as a rival, but as a threat that must be destroyed. Clear the hall! Kaelion's voice rolled through the chamber like thunder. But, Your Majesty, one noble stammered. Now. The growl beneath his command sent a shiver down spines. Guards scrambled to obey. The doors groaned open, and reluctant nobles filed out in uneasy silence. The princesses followed, some with veils of feigned pity, others with thinly veiled venom in their eyes. Vera Silvaris lingered last, her amethyst gaze burning into Serenya like a curse. She did not bow. She only smiled. And that smile was sharper than any blade. At last, only two remained in the vast hall. The alphaking and his maid. Kaelion rose slowly, his body still weakened, his breath uneven. The poison clung to his veins, but his will was iron. His hand never left Serenya's face until he finally pulled her to her feet with him. Her knees buckled, but his grip steadied her. You saved me, he said, his voice low, rough with both pain and curiosity. How? Serenya's lips parted, but no sound came. She wanted to look away, to bow, to flee. Yet his eyes, those storm-dark eyes, held her captive. He was not a man one could lie to, not a king one could deceive. His wolf prowled just beneath the surface, watching, waiting for truth. Her chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. I only remembered something. An old remedy. Kaelion's jaw tightened. An old remedy? That poison was not of mortal craft. The herbs you used, where did you learn them? Serenya's throat closed. She had buried this truth so deep it felt like ashes in her lungs. Her hands trembled at her sides. Answer me, Serenya, he commanded. But softer then, almost gentle. Do not fear me. Fear is for my enemies. You are not one. Her eyes burned. The words she had run from her entire life pressed against her tongue. My mother taught me, she whispered at last. The silence that followed was heavier than any outcry. Kaelion's gaze narrowed. Your mother. Serenya swallowed hard, the memory clawing its way from the shadows of her heart. She was a healer. She knew the old ways, the ancient remedies passed from those before, herbs that could cure sickness or draw out venom. She taught me when I was small, before. Her voice faltered. Her breath shuddered. Kaelion stepped closer. Before what? Her emerald eyes lifted, shining with pain. Before they burned her. The words cut the air like steel. Kaelion stilled. They said she was a witch, Serenya whispered, voice breaking. But she was not. She healed the sick, mended bones, soothed fevers when no physician could. And for that, they accused her of dark sorcery. Nobles, priests, people who feared what they did not understand. Her tears slipped, but she did not wipe them. I was 12 when they dragged her to the pyre. I heard her screams. I smelled the smoke. And I swore never to let anyone see what she gave me. Never to touch those herbs again. Never to be like her. Because they would call me the same. They would call me witch. The hall seemed to echo with her confession, each word a ghost clawing at the walls. Kaelion's wolf snarled in fury, his rage barely chained. His eyes burned, not with judgment, but with something far more dangerous. They executed her, he said, his voice sharp with venom. For healing. Serenya nodded, her throat raw. Yes. He turned away for a moment, fists clenched, his cloak whipping around him as he paced. The fury in his chest was near volcanic. Nobles, always nobles, with their fear and their petty hunger for control. They had stolen from him something he had not even known existed. A protector, a healer, a woman of ancient blood. He turned back, storm-dark eyes locking on Serenya again. Do you know who your mother truly was? Serenya blinked, confused. She was a healer, nothing more. Kaelion shook his head, his expression dark. No, Serenya, not just a healer. The knowledge you used, those herbs, those rites, they are not common. They belong to a lineage older than crowns, older than wolves, the blood of the protectors. Her breath caught. The protectors? His gaze softened, though his voice was still iron. A sacred line. Those who once walked with alphas, guardians of balance. They kept kingdoms from falling into ruin. They were the shield behind the throne. But centuries ago, when fear and jealousy festered in noble courts, they branded your kind witches. They hunted them, burned them, tried to erase them from history. Serenya's knees weakened. The truth struck her like a blow. She had lived in shame, in fear, believing her mother cursed. But Kaelion was telling her something far different, that she was not cursed at all. She was chosen. Her voice trembled. You mean, I carry their blood? Yes, Kaelion growled. His wolf surged close to the surface, his eyes glinting gold. And that is why the herbs worked. Why your touch could reach me when poison sought to end me. It is not witchcraft, Serenya. It is your birthright. Her world spun. She clutched at the edge of the throne for balance, her heart racing. Her mother's face flashed before her, her gentle smile, her quiet warnings, her last lullabies whispered by firelight. All this time she had carried shame like a shackle. All this time she had feared discovery. But now the Alpha King himself stood before her, declaring her blood sacred. Tears welled in her eyes. If that is true, then why did she have to die? Kaelion's jaw hardened. Because nobles are cowards. They kill what they do not control. He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming, his hand once again lifting to her face. His thumb brushed away a tear with surprising gentleness. But I will not let them take you. Not now. Not ever. Serenya's breath caught at his words, at the fierce promise burning in his tone. And yet, fear lingered. If they knew, if they discover what I am, they will not touch you. His voice was low, dangerous, because you are mine. The word sent fire down her spine, not chains, not captivity, but a vow as fierce as the wolf inside him. But even as the moment burned between them, Serenya felt the shadow of danger creep in. Somewhere beyond these walls, Vera Silvaris smiled her serpent smile. The poison had failed, but Serenya knew this was only the beginning, because now she was no longer invisible, no longer a maid in the shadows. She was the daughter of a protector, the savior of the Alpha King, and his claim. The kingdom would not forgive her for it. What happens when desire turns to envy? What happens when women raised to be worshipped, pampered, and obeyed suddenly see themselves eclipsed, not by a rival of equal standing, but by a servant girl with calloused hands and a plain linen dress? And what happens when 100 crowns realize that the throne they schemed, fought, and lied for has already been stolen by someone who was never invited to compete? Do you hear it? The whispering, the rustling in the shadows, the hiss of silk against marble as princesses plot vengeance with their painted lips curved in poisonous smiles. This is where devotion ends. This is where fury begins. Morning light spilled across the palace of Elarindor like molten gold, but it carried no warmth. Not today. Not after the night that had shaken the kingdom to its core. Rumors spread faster than wildfire. From marble corridors to marketplace stalls, from royal banquet halls to taverns filled with drunkards, the words were the same. The Alpha King desires a maid. The phrase was spat in disbelief, whispered with terror, gasped with envy. It was repeated so often that even the walls of the palace seemed to hum with it. And each repetition was a dagger twisting deeper into the hearts of the 100 princesses who had come to win him. Princess Vera Silvaris stood before her mirror, her fingers clawing into the silk of her gown, until beads tore loose and fell like bloodied pearls onto the floor. Her amethyst eyes burned, not with sadness, not with hurt, but with pure, calculated wrath. "A maid," she hissed. Her reflection sneered back at her, every bit as vicious as the storm brewing in her chest. He calls her his in front of us all. As if our crowns are dust, as if our thrones are worthless baubles. Her ladies-in-waiting exchanged nervous glances, but none dared speak. They had seen Vera angry before, but never like this. Never with the fire of humiliation scorching her pride. She turned, her jeweled braids whipping around her like weapons. "Summon them," she ordered coldly. "All who have suffered this insult. Tonight we are not rivals. Tonight we are sisters in vengeance." By nightfall, the palace gardens were alive not with laughter or flirtations, but with hushed voices and dangerous eyes. Lanterns swayed in the wind, casting long shadows that danced across the roses like serpents ready to strike. One by one, the princesses gathered. Their gowns shimmered, their jewels glittered. But their faces, those painted masks of grace and allure, were twisted with fury. "Did you hear the whispers?" murmured Princess Kalira of Tharvan, her silver crown glinting beneath the lantern light. "The people say she saved him from poison, that she carries magic in her blood." "A witch," spat another. "That's what she is. No maid could wield such power." "She bewitched him," added Princess Nyla of Mirador, her nails digging into her palms. "No alpha would ever desire a servant otherwise." Vera stepped into their circle, every inch the serpent queen. Her gown of midnight velvet clung to her frame like shadows, and her voice dripped with venomous honey. "Listen well," she said softly, her words silencing the crowd. "We came here to claim a throne, to stand beside the alphaking as queens, not fools to be mocked. And now a maid threatens everything we are, everything we deserve." The princesses murmured, their whispers rising like the hiss of snakes. "She must be removed," Vera continued, her amethyst eyes gleaming. "But not with crude blades or spilled blood. No, her death would make her a martyr, and martyrs are remembered. What we must do is ruin her." Meanwhile, Serenya Vale moved through the palace halls with her head lowered, the weight of 100 stairs pressing against her like chains. Whispers trailed her everywhere she went. "That's her, the maid. Witch blood. She bewitched him." She hugged her apron tighter around herself, emerald eyes burning with humiliation she dared not show. She had never asked for this. She had never sought his gaze, never craved his touch. Yet now she was hunted by jealous eyes sharper than daggers. And worse, Kaelion himself had not helped her cause. He sought her out in quiet moments, his wolf restless without her scent. She could feel his gaze in the hallways, heavy as iron chains. She could hear the echo of his vow, that single word, mine, burning in her veins like fire. But to the rest of the kingdom, it was scandal, treason against tradition. The princess's plan began with whispers, but whispers sharpened quickly into weapons. By the second night, a rumor had taken root. Serenya Vale, the maid, had not saved the alphaking with skill or bravery. She had saved him with sorcery. Her herbs were witchcraft, her hands stained with forbidden power. By the third night, the rumor grew teeth. She had poisoned him herself, only to play savior, a cunning ploy to win his favor. By the fourth, the whispers became something even darker. She seeks the crown. She will steal the throne. She will curse us all. And by the fifth night, Vera struck. The trap was perfect. In the deepest hours before dawn, Serenya was summoned to the royal treasury under pretense of new linens to be delivered. She obeyed, weary-eyed, unaware of the venom coiling around her fate. The treasury gleamed with gold and jewels, guarded by wards and soldiers. But Serenya's task was simple: replace silken coverings on the chests that housed royal treasures. She carried folded fabric, her hands trembling as she worked. But as she smoothed the velvet over one gilded chest, her fingers brushed something sharp, something that should not have been there. Her heart lurched. She pulled back the fabric and froze. The royal crown of Elarindor, not locked in its jeweled case, not guarded by steel, but nestled among her linens, the very crown itself. "Thief!" The shout split the silence. Guards swarmed like wolves, their blades drawn. Serenya stumbled back, horror flooding her veins. No, I didn't," she cried, but her words drowned beneath the clang of steel. "Caught red-handed," sneered a voice from the shadows. Vera stepped forward, her smile sweet as poisoned wine, her amethyst eyes triumphant. "Behold the truth," she said coldly. "The maid does not only covet the alphaking, she covets his throne." Serenya's breath broke. Her knees weakened as guards closed around her, their faces hard, their eyes accusing. It was a trap, a cruel, perfect trap, and the kingdom would not forgive her for it. Far above the treasury, in his chamber of obsidian and fire, Kaelion Draemir stirred. His wolf thrashed within him, restless, enraged, its instincts clawing against his chest. Something was wrong. Something was being taken from him. And the alphaking, storm-dark eyes blazing, would tear apart heaven and earth before he let it happen. What is betrayal, if not a dagger carved by envy, sharpened by fear, and thrust into the heart of innocence? What is justice, if the scales are already weighted with lies, crowns, and bloodlines? And what happens when a king who rules beasts is forced to choose between his people's laws and the single fragile soul his wolf refuses to live without? Listen closely. The hall is heavy with silence. The people are gathered, the air thick with whispers that crawl like vipers across the marble floor. And in the center of it all, a maid trembles beneath the weight of 1,000 accusing eyes. This is not a trial. This is a stage. And the play about to unfold is written not in ink, but in venom. The great hall of Elarindor's palace had never felt so suffocating. Its towering pillars of white stone, its banners embroidered with wolves of silver and gold, its chandeliers blazing with enchanted light. Everything gleamed with majesty, yet the air itself felt poisoned. The court had gathered, a sea of nobles, princesses, and advisors, their jewels glittering like the teeth of predators. The people of the city crammed into balconies and galleries above, murmuring, pointing, hissing. The scent of suspicion hung in the air, like smoke after a fire. At the center, bound by chains of black iron, Serenya Vale knelt on the cold marble floor. Her emerald eyes darted wide with disbelief, her hands trembling though she clenched them tight in her lap. She had been dragged here from the treasury, accused before she could breathe, before she could even scream the truth. Guards had shoved her forward, and the crowd, hungry for scandal, for blood, had roared like a beast given fresh prey. And now, here she was. A maid accused of treason. A girl accused of stealing the very crown of Elarindor. Let the trial commence. The words boomed from the high throne where the council sat. 12 figures draped in crimson robes, the most powerful voices beneath the king himself. Their faces were hard, their gazes unyielding. One of them, Lord Maelric, rose. His silver beard glistened under the torchlight, his eyes sharp as a hawk's. He lifted a scroll. "Serenya Vale," he declared, his voice carrying through the hall. "Maid of the royal household, daughter of no known noble house, child of a woman executed for witchcraft. You stand accused of theft most grave, the attempted stealing of the crown of Elarindor. Do you deny these charges?" Gasps rippled through the hall. The name of her mother, her hidden past, spoken aloud before all. Serenya's blood turned to ice. Her voice cracked, desperate. "I deny it. I never touched the crown. I was sent there. I don't know why, I swear it. I was framed." "Framed?" Lord Maelric sneered. "And who, pray, would place the crown of kings into your hands?" From the corner of the hall, Princess Vera's lips curved into a smile like a dagger unsheathed. Whispers exploded around her. She dares deny it. Of course she would. Witches always deny. She bewitched the king. Now she tries to steal his throne. Serenya shook her head, her chest heaving. Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of them. Her gaze lifted, searching, pleading, for him. And there he was. At the far end of the hall, towering in his obsidian armor, sat King Kaelion Draemir. His storm-gray eyes burned like thunderclouds as he watched her. His jaw clenched so tight a muscle ticked in his cheek. His wolf thrashed beneath his skin, its growl an echo only he could hear. Every instinct in him screamed, "She is mine. They touch what is mine." But tradition chained him as surely as the iron shackled her. Lord Maelric slammed his staff against the marble. "You are charged not only with theft, but with treason. For to steal the crown is to steal the throne. And for such crimes, there is only one punishment: death." A collective hiss swept through the hall. Serenya's body went cold. Her breath caught in her throat, her heart slamming so hard she thought it might burst. Death. Execution. For something she did not do. She forced herself to speak, though her voice shook. "Please, you must believe me. I did not steal the crown. I never even touched it until it was shoved into my hands. Please, someone set me up. Someone placed it there. Someone wants me gone." The council did not soften. Their faces remained carved from stone. And then Vera stepped forward. She glided into the light, her gown of black velvet glittering with amethyst gems, her beauty radiant, her expression righteous. She lowered her head with feigned humility, though her smile betrayed the venom curling beneath her tongue. "My lords," she said sweetly, her voice carrying across the hall, "I was there. I saw it with my own eyes. The maid was alone with the crown. When we found her, her hands were upon it. She cannot deny what we all witnessed. The hall erupted. Vera Silvaris saw it. A princess does not lie. The maid is guilty, Serenya gasped, shaking her head violently. No, she lies. She set me up. Please, you must see it. I've done nothing wrong. But Vera only lowered her lashes, her smile tender, pitiful. She seeks pity even now, but pity cannot excuse treason. The council leaned toward one another, their whispers low, dangerous. The words Serenya dreaded most soon followed. Execution. It is the only way. She cannot live. The people must see justice. The words swirled through the hall like poison in wine. The crowd roared for blood. Serenya's body trembled so hard she could barely stay upright. Death. They were going to kill her, and there was nothing she could do. Her eyes filled, her voice breaking into a sob. Kaelion! His name, whispered like a prayer, cracked through the chaos. And then, the king rose. The hall fell silent. Kaelion's towering form descended from his throne, each step echoing like thunder. His cloak of black wolf fur trailed behind him, his eyes burning, his presence a storm unleashed. He reached the center of the hall, stopping before Serenya. She looked up at him through tear-streaked cheeks, trembling, desperate, broken. And then, before the council, before the nobles, before the world, Kaelion Draemir spoke. She is no thief. Gasps shook the hall. She is no traitor. His voice thundered, echoing from pillar to pillar. She is no witch. The council scrambled to protest, voices rising, but Kaelion silenced them with a growl that rumbled like an earthquake. His eyes glowed, wolf's fire blazing. She is my mate, he roared, his voice shaking the hall to its foundations. My wolf has chosen her. She belongs to me. And no crown, no princess, no council, no law will change that. The hall erupted in chaos. Nobles shouted, princesses screamed. The council stood in fury. But Serenya could hear none of it. Her heart stopped. Her breath broke. Her body trembled not from fear, but from the weight of his words. My mate. In that instant, the chains on her wrists meant nothing. The accusations meant nothing. The world meant nothing. Only him. Only Kaelion. And as the storm of voices clashed around them, she knew one truth burned brighter than all the rest. The kingdom of Elarindor would never be the same again. What is a kingdom, if not the mirror of its king's heart? What is loyalty, if it fractures the moment tradition is tested? And what is love, true, dangerous, all-consuming love, if not the spark that sets fire to 1,000 crowns? Tonight, the wolves of Elarindor will howl louder than ever. Tonight, history itself will be rewritten. But before the ink dries, blood may yet be spilled. Do you hear it? The uproar, the clash of voices like steel against steel. Half the court cries betrayal, half cries salvation. The maid kneels at the center of it all, shackled, trembling, yet marked by destiny. And the alphaking, with his storm-born eyes and unbroken will, has thrown the gauntlet down before the world. She is my mate, he declared. And nothing, no crown, no law, no princess, will change that. But kingdoms are not so easily tamed. The great hall of Elarindor was chaos incarnate. Nobles rose from their seats, shouting in outrage, their jeweled hands pounding against polished marble tables. The council, crimson-robed, pressed forward in fury, their staffs striking the ground with demands for order. From the balconies above, the people screamed and argued, some in awe of the king's defiance, others crying that he had shamed them all. The sound shook the rafters, thunderous, primal, almost bestial. The 100 princesses glittered like venomous stars in the storm, their gowns and jewels dazzling under firelight, their faces twisted in rage. Vera's amethyst eyes glowed with triumph for a single heartbeat, until Kaelion's words thundered through her like a blade. Mate. That single word shattered her schemes like glass. Her painted lips parted, and for the first time in her life, her perfect composure cracked. But Serenya heard none of it. Her chest heaved, tears streaking her cheeks, her entire body trembling under the chains that still bit into her wrists. She looked up at him. Her alpha king, her storm, her impossible salvation, and felt the weight of his vow settle into her very bones. Mate. It was the one word she had never dared hope for. The council surged forward, voices booming. This is madness. An alpha cannot take a maid as queen. You shame the throne of Elarindor. Lord Maelric slammed his staff so hard against the floor that sparks flew. My king, you cannot undo centuries of tradition for the sake of infatuation. Kaelion turned his gaze upon him, eyes glowing like molten silver. His wolf growled beneath his skin, a sound that vibrated through the hall, silencing even the boldest voices. Infatuation? His voice was a blade, cold and sharp. This is no passing desire. This is no trick of flesh or whim of the moment. This is bond. This is fate. My wolf has chosen, and when a wolf chooses, the choice is eternal. Gasps echoed. Some faces turned pale with fear, others flushed with fury. Vera stepped forward, venom dripping from her every syllable. And what of us? The 100 crowns who came to honor you? The kingdoms who sent their daughters in good faith? You would cast them aside for a servant with dirt beneath her nails? Kaelion's lips curved, slow, dangerous. Yes. The single word fell like a hammer. The uproar was instant. Screams, accusations, weeping, curses. The princesses rose in a storm of silks, their fury like wildfire. Some turned their backs on him, veils whipping. Others pointed at Serenya as though she were plague itself. She will bring ruin. A maid upon the throne is death to tradition. She is a witch, she is a curse, she is nothing. And yet, amidst the fury, voices rose from the crowd above. Commoners, merchants, soldiers. She saved him. She healed our king. If she is his mate, then she is chosen by the gods themselves. The balance of the hall cracked. Half the kingdom screamed for her blood. The other half screamed for her crown. Through the storm, Kaelion moved to her side. He bent, his armor groaning, and with a strength that shook the air itself, he tore the chains from her wrists. The iron shattered like brittle glass. Serenya gasped, staring at her raw, bruised wrists, then at him. You are free, he whispered, low, fierce. No one will bind you again. His fingers lingered on her skin, rough warmth searing her. Their eyes met and the hall around them disappeared. For a heartbeat, there was only them, the maid and the king, bound by something deeper than law, deeper than blood. The wolf inside him quieted. The storm inside her heart steadied. And in that silence, the world shifted. The next dawn rose blood-red. The skies over Elarindor streaked with fire. The city below boiled with whispers, arguments, divided hearts. Nobles plotted in hushed corridors. Princesses packed their gowns with bitter tears, and common folk lit candles in quiet prayer. Some prayed for the kingdom's salvation. Others prayed for its fall. But in the palace, a decision had been made. The coronation would proceed. The great square of Elarindor swelled with people, their faces a sea of anticipation, fury, awe. The cathedral bells tolled, deep and ominous, shaking the cobblestones. Kaelion stood before the altar, crowned in black iron and silver, his wolf's fire glowing behind his eyes. Beside him, trembling but resolute, stood Serenya Vale, her maid's garb stripped away, replaced with a gown of deep green silk that caught the light like forest leaves after rain. Her emerald eyes blazed with courage, though her hands shook as she clasped them before her. The high priest lifted the crown. By law and by right, we crown the mate of the alphaking. Let the kingdom witness. Gasps, curses, cheers, all collided in a thunderous roar. Serenya's knees nearly gave, but Kaelion's hand found hers, steady, unyielding. He laced his fingers through hers, grounding her, claiming her before the world. And as the crown lowered onto her dark hair, the world seemed to still. The maid became queen, but not all bowed. Vera's eyes burned with hatred as she tore the jewels from her throat, scattering them across the stone like blood. One by one, princesses turned and stormed away, gowns trailing like banners of war. Elarindor has fallen, one hissed. "The king has doomed us," spat another. They left in fury, their crowns glinting in the dawn light like blades. Their vows of vengeance were whispers now, but soon they would become storms. Serenya stood tall despite the tremor in her chest. The crown was heavy, her fear immense, but Kaelion's hand in hers was strength itself. Together they turned to face their people, half bowed, half spat, half adored, half condemned. But she did not falter, not this time. The high priest's voice boomed over the square. "Behold, Queen Serenya of Elarindor!" The crowd split into thunderous applause and furious protest. The air itself seemed to tremble under the weight of divided destiny. Kaelion turned to her, lowering his head so only she could hear. "They will fight us. They will curse us. They may even try to tear us apart." Serenya's emerald eyes lifted, fierce despite the tears shimmering there. "Then let them try, for I would rather stand in fire beside you than live in safety without you." He smiled then, a rare, raw smile, fierce and tender all at once. "And so we shall." He drew her close before all, before gods and men alike, and pressed his lips to hers. The square erupted. Some cheered, some screamed, some fell to their knees. But the moment was theirs. And yet, far beyond the palace gates, in the shadows of rival kingdoms, whispers already spread. The spurned princesses gathered like wolves scenting blood. Vera's voice rose among them, a promise forged in venom and fire. "This is not the end," she vowed. "The maid wears her crown today, but tomorrow we take her head. War is coming." The bells of Elarindor rang out, their sound both triumphant and foreboding. The maid had become queen. The king had claimed his mate. And the kingdom would never know peace again. But for now, just for this moment, love had won. And history would never forget it. If you enjoyed this story, don't hesitate to subscribe, hit that like button, and share it with someone who loves a good twist of fate and passion. I'd love to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, what part stood out to you the most? And if you were in this story, who would you be, and what would you have done differently? Your thoughts might just inspire the next tale.